Have you heard the old theory that fairies are actually fallen angels? Well, there are many theories as to who or what the fairies are. There are those who believe they are an alien race who came to Earth a long, long time ago and live here mostly unseen by us. Some will tell you that fairies are in fact ghosts or spirits. And this is a really interesting idea because there is ample crossover in sightings and the physicality and the behaviour of fairies and ghosts. Or are fairy nature spirits? Are they the manifestation of energy emanating from the change of seasons, or the transition at dawn and dusk, or from living things such as trees, flowers, hills, stones and crystals? I actually explore this theory in an upcoming video, so keep an eye out for that one. But others believe the fairy folk are creatures, much like us, who have evolved from this earth, just as we have, and live here just as we do. Then there is another theory, long held by our ancestors, that fairies are in fact rebellious angels who fell from heaven and dwell in a world of their own, being neither good enough for heaven or bad enough for hell, destined to dwell on earth in limbo between the two. Whereupon the Father ordered that the gates of heaven and the gates of hell should be closed. This was instantly done, and those who were in, and those who were out, while the hosts who had left heaven and had not reached hell flew into the holes of the earth like the stormy petrels. These are the fairy folk. This was a popular belief which passed within families for centuries, and not just within older generations either. Marion McLean from Barra in Scotland was a young woman when she reported her view on the subject. When the fallen angels were cast out of heaven, God commanded them thus: "You will go to take up your abodes in crevices, under the earth, in mounds or soil or rocks." And according to this command, they have been condemned to inhabit the places named for a certain period of time, and when it expired, they will be seen as numerous as ever. In 1909, a fella named William Cashin was the keeper of Peel Castle on the Isle of Man, and he said this: "My father's and grandfather's idea was that the fairies tumbled out of the battlements of heaven, falling earthward for 3 days and 3 nights, as thick as hail they were, and that 1/3 of them fell into the sea, 1/3 onto the land, and 1/3 remained in the air, and these places they will remain until the day of judgment." So let's just pause and imagine that fairy are fallen angels from heaven, that 1/3 of these angels landed on the ground. We would know those as brownies and banshee and pixies, old hags, black shucks, and so many more. And according to this theory, 1/3 of them remained in the sky, which baffles me a little. I wouldn't think that there are that many flying fairies. The sluagh, will-o'-wisp, perhaps some pixies. But the third group of fallen angels landed in water, and there they've dwelled ever since. So we're talking about selkies, sprites, kelpie, merman, mermaids, blue men of the Minch. Well, what do you think of this theory so far? Well, we know that this belief didn't exist in just a pocket of folk. It was widespread. Let me tell you about a fella named John Campbell, who openly shared his wife's experience. Now, Mrs. Campbell was the housekeeper for the late Reverend Donald MacDonald, who was considered a distinguished man with a reputation for knowing all about fairies and spirits. I have heard my wife say that she questioned Father MacDonald if it were possible that such beings or spirits as fairies were in existence, and he said yes, they were. Those who left heaven after the fallen angels, and that those going out after the fallen angels had gone out, was so numerous and kept going so long that St. Michael notified Christ that the throne was fast emptying, and when Christ saw the state of affairs, he ordered the doors of heaven to be closed at once, saying, as he gave the order, "Who is out, and who is in, is in." And the fairies are as numerous now as ever they were before the beginning of the world. This is a really interesting example because it sort of shows in a nutshell that there was a collective belief within communities that fairies were in fact fallen angels. And interestingly, I think, the line between religion and the fairies is blurred here. They are not separate entities. Now, there may be many reasons for this, but we do know that belief in the fairy creatures was widespread before Christianity swept across Celtic countries, and there was a period where the church not only openly accepted the existence of the fairies, but made efforts to incorporate the belief in the fairy folk into their own belief system. So let's imagine a congregation of folk who had long believed in the existence of the fairies were now sitting before this intelligent, revered man, a man who could read and write and seemed to have all the answers. And there he is telling you that, yes, you're right, fairies do exist, but in fact they have come from heaven and they are stuck here for their sins. He tells you they aren't to be trusted or helped or even acknowledged, but instead look to the church, for the church has all the answers. It was a smart move, but the funny thing is, and interesting particularly for us, is that for many of the clergy, this wasn't just lip service or pushing a church propaganda. You see, loads of the clergy truly believed in the existence of fairies, and ordinary folk often turned to them to help them understand and identify fairies or seek guidance on how to deal with problem fairies. So we find it was not only easy for people to believe that the fairies who dwelled in the forts and hills and lakes near their own homes were angels fallen from heaven, they were actively encouraged to believe it by the people in their communities who held the most influence and power in both the practical and spiritual sense. Isn't that fascinating? We'll explore the surprising and peculiar relationship between fairies and the clergy in a future video. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, please be sure to subscribe. It doesn't cost a thing and it really helps me out. Until next time, stay curious and be kind. Cheerio!